Whoa, camera's on. Okay, EfilDay 3, I think, video, and not having one of my, feeling like not having one of my, I said that backwards, having one of my, alright, sorry, I don't feel too good. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That matters to me, but I mean, it doesn't matter to this video. No, it really doesn't. To its function, so yeah, we're going to talk about purpose, function, productivity. Function, productivity, purpose, objective. Ew. Yeah. So again, we're back to word games and semantics. It's all how the thing is framed. So I'd almost argue that the way I feel frames perception in a way. Obviously, your condition makes certain things easy to see and certain things hard to see. And the place you're coming from, the position you're viewing it from, certain things are more visible than from other places. Yeah, so that's just a basic truth. And still, from these different positions collectively, sampling from different positions, from your comfortable position, from your uncomfortable position, from your best day position to your worst day position. You sort of have to make up the truth out of those different samples of what it is to be alive. And again, we're trying to describe what it is, how it functions, not what you think or feel. Thinking would be valid if people were thinking about something other than what they feel. That's the problem. And when you're thinking about what you feel, then you're failing. So anyway, so you could think of it too in terms of like a gross domestic product. You know, they have some stupid phrases for what the economy produces or something. And the more important number would be the net domestic product. You know, when you take out the cost of it, how many people you killed, and how many people got injured, and how many people got ripped off, and you know, all the negatives to that production, all the future cost to, you know, degraded environment and consumption of resources, and then you'd have some sort of net domestic product number. That would be far more interesting than this idea of how much forward progress did you make. Well, how many, for every step forward you took, how many steps backwards did you take? Because that's the truth of it. So the argument being made is that I'm making anyway. You know, is that you know, the way we view the production of our existence is more about a subjective chase, this personal chase that I'm on. Where am I at personally at any one moment in the progression of it, and am I winning or losing in that moment? And I think most people do that with life. They perceive its purpose, the whole game's purpose, based on their position on the game board. They're not too good at looking at the whole board and saying collectively, where's all this stuff going? Is there a game here? Is the game winnable? So there's lots of analogies. I used the analogy the other day of like, you know, in baseball, you know, there's players who play for the team. You know, they'll take one for the team. They'll bunt or do whatever they're required to do. And other players who just can't do it. You know, they're just, you know, I want to hit a home run. I want to hit a home run. I want to hit a home run. And their objective is just to hit a home run. And they don't care whether the team wins or loses or any of that other crap. They just care about hitting a home run. And so, yeah, there's no real conversation about your personal ambition. You can be completely distracted by some ambition, like something you personally need to accomplish. And this sort of gets back to a conversation other people were having about the word love, you know, my misery, me, and such. And, you know, whether it is such a concept, and, you know, it sort of is a collection of emotional responses to a circumstance. You know, ones that live inside our ego, essentially. You know, having the right person desire you, dependency, possession. There's this weird kind of possessiveness and just being able to capture their attention or something. That somehow to people is gratifying, and when that's taken away, when the eyes that admired you are gone, maybe that's the deficit. But there's lots of ways. Again, it's a very emotionally charged word, and the mechanism of desire is so corrupting. I mean, just I've stated it before. I'll probably state it before the end of this in the next two videos somewhere again. That desire is a projection of value. It's not your senses saying what's valuable in the world and I'll desire it. No, it's your body and your psychology forcing a perception of value where you don't get to essentially make it up. Your subconscious wiring, below the level of debate, decides for you. It rings the hunger food bell, and it rings the desire relationship, whatever you want to call that bell, and it in many ways obliges you through these addictions or attachments to invest in dramas that exist in your life of, I want to be. When you start doing that, I want to, and then define the accomplishment, be President of the United States. Unfortunately, nobody wants to do that because they know what they're doing, which is pretty tragic. But, it looks nice on your life resume. He was President of the United States. Yeah, so, people can walk off to their grave feeling, oh, well, there, I'm validated because I was President. That's pretty cool, right? In and of itself. But that's a downside too, right? Because, if you're like Nixon, it's kind of messy. Maybe it would be better off if you weren't President of the United States. Anyway, where do I go from here? Purpose. So purpose is defined by some definition of an accomplishment, some definition of some product produced. And for some people who just look at the nature of matter, they'll just say, well, our purpose is just our DNA to survive, and that's all there is. It's just survival. It doesn't matter what condition and quality and all these other words go out the window, because the only mission is survival. And that's the full measure of your value, is the fact that your DNA has survived. And the only way you gain any credibility is if somehow your DNA survives. Seems really stupid. Yeah, I can't make anything out of that. Alright, so then the other value would be this qualitative value. How did you feel, and how did you make the things around you feel? Yeah, so that would be the value. That would be the thing produced. And then that gets to be this difficult mixed bag thing. So then we're back to the value equations. We're back to trying to assess some sort of measure of worth. And the worth changes based on, the event changes based on perception and who and how. I mean, there's so many of these different questions that'll decide. I mean, you can shoot somebody, and if it's somebody who's in pain and they say, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, kill me, kill me, kill me, well, then you shoot them. It's a perfectly good thing to do. It's perfectly reasonable. And then if somebody else is saying, don't shoot me, I have things to do and things I want to accomplish and all this other stuff, and you shoot them even badly, where you don't kill them, you just injure them, then you're causing them a whole bunch of pain and suffering, and you're also thwarting their ambition. And so there's a whole different value to those. So it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing, and it has different effects depending on how the individual is disposed. And so it gets difficult to just use generic, simplistic language like shooting and say, okay, is it good or bad? So you could say feeling good, satisfying an ambition. You can use words like that, but it doesn't mean anything without a context. If If you satisfy the ambition by exploiting a whole bunch of other people, making their lives miserable and causing their kids to die, well, that's very different than satisfying even a lesser ambition without any substantial destruction to the value or quality of the experience for the other people. So you can't take your life and your experience out of the context of what it cost. And then the costs, you start adding those up. I don't know whether that's for this video. Let's do a little bit of it. I mean, the oxygen you breathe comes at a price, at the biosphere. The biosphere has tons of billions and billions of sentient creatures in it struggling for their individual survival and doing so at impossible type odds. I mean, horrific carnage. I use sea turtles again, why not? Hundreds of eggs laid, 2 survivors. Really hard odds of getting to getting to the point where you even have the capacity to procreate, let alone have a satisfied ambition. So how many don't even come close to ever satisfying an ambition or a desire? They just live and die, struggling with each day just to do the simplest thing of breathing and surviving. And so I call that part of the cost, part of the price of your existence is this biosphere you're feeding on, that your comforts are made out of. And then you start getting into the equation with the more overt exploitation of the human race. You almost have to account for the human race as part of the price of your existence. You can't advocate for the continuation of your existence without advocating for the right of everybody else to exist and to spread their DNA. You can't claim a right to spread yours without endorsing the right of the others to do the same. And so then you have to take responsibility for the gross consumption and the overpopulation and the chaos and the carnage that's created by that waste. So, the war, that's another price for your existence, is the inevitable conflicts that will arise because of this resource deprivation, because it is possible for people to steal from each other, essentially, or to take more than their share, and create inequities that create bitternesses and hostilities and hatreds. And then you're down in the bottom line. When you condense it all, you can go back to the simple equation: is how many is too many? How many victims are too many victims? When is it a Holocaust and when is it just a bad day? Is it some stupid number? I don't know. I think that gets a little silly if you're doing the taking. If you're, how many people would have to be in concentration camps for us to be obligated to do something about it? Right? I mean, theoretically, your brain can say 1 isn't an unreasonable answer. It's not on its face unreasonable. Okay, it seems impossible to live by that standard, but on its face, it doesn't seem unreasonable to say the word 1 is too many. And I could argue that any profound suffering endured is too much, because what we're accomplishing isn't real enough. It isn't big enough. It's contrived. That's the biggest problem of it, right? It's manufactured by biology. It's not manufactured by a principle or an ideal or something brilliant. It's manufactured by a crude biological process, by gushing organs that are processing glunk. And, it percolates into this brain that says, the prime directive is keep the body alive, and secondarily is get the DNA into the future, and it's only a thirdarily that there's any kind of conception of personal welfare in any kind of bigger way. Anyway, so purpose is just a word. They're all just words, and they're really poorly defined words. And this even gets back to like a conference report video on vegetarianism. What's it called? Effing animals. Where there appears to be contradictions and hypocrisy in human behavior if you use regular language. There's no way to resolve the disparity in treatment and the disparity in perception, because the language really isn't good enough. When is a killing a murder, and when is a killing justice? I mean, killing can be both things. So the words are too simplistic and too vacant. Maybe it's not entirely the word's fault. It is the fault of our common use language, where most people lack the discipline to use the right word in the right context. Lack the knowledge. I mean, I'll claim I'm guilty also of having a lack of pure understanding of exactly when it's appropriate to use which word, and what words should never be used, because they don't have any explicit or coherent definition in what we know to be reality. So they're just wild cards that are thrown out there like spontaneous to manufacture a truth that doesn't exist. They're kind of like the ending the story with, and they lived happily ever after. It's just a cheat. It doesn't tell the whole story, and without the whole story, you got no net product. You got no truth. You have just a moment, and moments are going to be on, they're going to consist of a varying circumstance, and the only circumstance that matters is the end product, or the net result. So your GDP doesn't matter too much if your net product is crap. Okay, that's probably enough. Sorry, just it's rough. It's gonna be a rough day, so maybe later I can make a less lethargic video if I'm feeling better and such.